Hello everyone and welcome back to the Story Nook. Today we are reading more of I'd Rather Have a Cat Than a Harem, written by, page for it, by Kozuzu Kobato, and the artist is Hinano Chano. And I'd rather have a cat than a harem, reincarnated into the world of an otome game as a cat-loving villainess. And we are currently on chapter 16. We had some issues. Hopefully the program won't just randomly freeze again. And I did already read this chapter with my husband. We recorded it. However, I don't know what happened. The whole entire computer glitched out on me and it was sad. But we're going to be reading it. The last sentence I read, because I did open up the last video file to see where did I end, was that she had become friends with Marvin and Derek, the caretaker of the messenger birds. So we're going to be continuing. So yeah, go ahead, grab your tea, your hot chocolate, your cocoa, your coffee, whatever it is. Where I live, it's cold. My house is barely at 40 degrees, so I am wrapped in a sweater, a cloak, and a heating blanket at this moment. So yeah, it's cold where I'm at. Stay warm. Amy had been told that she was allowed to visit whenever she wanted. No appointment needed. Whenever she went, she was always given a warm, unpretentious welcome, and she sometimes even brought Tigger along with her. The first couple of times she brought her cat, he'd been so shy that he never once strayed from her side. His head bobbed and weaved cutely as he looked around, interested in the horses and the birds. The royal birds had been trained to come at a whistle, but they were essentially allowed free range in their large enclosure and the outskirts of the forest beside it. They didn't seem to be able to sense that Amy was coming if she was hidden from sight. But as soon as she'd get into hearing distance, Ruta would fly out to her without even being called. She has become friends with the bird. His full wingspan looked to be about 5 feet. If I recall earlier, they said he was 5 pounds at some point in this chapter. And I'm just like, that sounds too light for a bird to be that big. But I don't know average bird weights and sizes, so I don't know. Easily longer than Amy was tall. But despite his large size, like a true bird of prey, his wings were virtually silent in flight. She would never notice him approaching her until he had practically reached her already. He was undeniably smart, too. Although he probably wasn't as sharp as a cat or a dog, he seemed to understand what she would say, and they shared some simple communication. That intelligence was likely part of the reason he became a royal messenger bird. To teach a messenger bird how to deliver letters, you had to first clearly show them the flight path. The caretaker, Derek, had been very excited to teach her how to do this. All she had to do, he explained, was place stones imbued with magic along the route for the birds to follow. Although they could be placed several miles apart, the birds would use them as a guide, and it would only take a few round trips for them to memorize the route. Amy was strongly reminded of the bird and the breadcrumbs in Hansel and Gretel. In her previous life, she only knew of owls acting as carrier pigeons in fantasy novels. She never actually heard of it happening in real life. She also remembered stories of owners training birds to return to them after going out hunting, but never as someone telling them to go somewhere, deliver something, and then return home. This world was very similar to her old world in many respects, but some of the details were a little different. The animals were somehow smarter, and even behaved a little differently. But then, this is a world where magical beasts are commonplace. Of course, it would be different. It hadn't been all that long since Amy had remembered her memories of her past life. She couldn't help but feeling like she had one foot in both worlds. But her family, who were basically masters of being reincarnated at this point, had given her some advice. Amy would gradually get used to this way of life, so she shouldn't force herself to dwell on the past, but neither should she put pressure on herself to forget it entirely. I'm so glad we're all reincarnated together. The characters from the books she used to read almost always were reincarnated alone. In the rare case there was someone else, it was usually their rival or a character totally unrelated to them. So there was practically no one they could ask for help. Regular life is confusing and distressing enough. I can't imagine how lonely it would feel, being burdened with something as big as your own cosmic past without having someone to talk to. If Amy had been alone, with no real-life experience and memories, only up until high school, she might have spiraled into a very dark place. I got a Discord notification. Sorry for everyone who heard that. Everyone in the Northland family had remembered their past lives at around 10 years old. Her mother had remembered under very cliché circumstances. She was with the man she'd been arranged to marry. She didn't faint like Amy did, but she started acting very strange and had requested they defer the engagement. While all that was going on, she happened to meet Amy's father in this world, which ended up being good timing, Isabel added with a laugh. But your father's realization was the best. He was disassembling a magical tool for fun, and then he suddenly remembered, this is a cog, not a circuit board. Amy and Harold had roared with laughter. They couldn't imagine a more fitting story for their father. Although it wasn't a circuit board, their father had been working on something modern. But after Isabel's many pleas, he had started trying to create a camera. Amy was almost as excited about it as her mother. Go, Technical Daddy! Build us a camera. Sounds amazing. Quite a while after her parents had met, when the Earl and Countess had looked at their children, they had a hunch they were reincarnations, too. Their faces looked different, but there was just something about them that was eerily similar. Not that they were very concerned either way, of course. They loved their children, reincarnated or not, and nothing else mattered to them. I'm not sure if being reincarnated makes things more peaceful or more chaotic. But sometimes it certainly comes in handy, Amy mused, absent-mindedly brushing her fingers against the spot on Rudolph's hip that had been injured. His stomach, with its white, fluffy, densely packed plumage, looked just like a cotton ball. There was only one spot where the feathers had been ripped off, exposing skin, although that was quickly being covered by downy new feathers. As she touched the now invisible scars, Rudolph tickled the back of her hand with his beak as if he was saying, "It doesn't hurt anymore." "It looks like you're all fixed up now, Rudolph. I'm so glad," she exclaimed. "It's all thanks to you, Amy," Edward said. "If any more time had passed, that injury would have been very hard to heal. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't healed him with your magic, he might never have flown again." "It's because you were so strong and managed to fly almost all the way home," she said to Rudolph. "You're very impressive." The bird hooted happily, because birds, and everyone likes compliments. Make sure to compliment somebody today. Who knows, it might be the only compliment they hear. My husband is always going off like, guys don't hear a lot of compliments, so he likes it when I compliment him. And Amy became even more convinced he understood human words. Rudolph likes being petted here, too. "On his forehead? All right, then." Amy rubbed the middle of his forehead with a few fingers. The feathers were soft and light, but his head was rock solid just below them. His head bobbed, his eyes half closed, and he leaned forward, practically shouting, "More forehead pets, please!" "Your face is just too cute." "A lot of birds don't like being petted," commented Edward. "But you do, don't you, Rudolph? And I'm glad you do, because that means I get to pet you." The world around them seemed to take on a rose-colored tint as the adorable chubby girl stared at the white owl with a dreamy expression. Edward, Amy, and Rudolph looked so sweet together. Marvin could almost smell the sugar in the air. He cleared his throat with a cough. Your Highness, Lady Amy, as much as I hate intruding on this delightful scene, it's about time we get going. Ah, you're right, said Edward. I'm sure they're waiting for us. Let's get started. Intruding? You're not intruding on anything. You got it all wrong. Then with Amy blushing and her mind circling at that casually uttered word, they proceeded to set up Rudolph's flight test. There were more caretakers around than usual today. She could also see several officials, who presumably had come down to observe. Amy was able to hold it together around so many people because she was so close to Marvin, Rudolph, and the horses. If she had been all alone, she would definitely have slunk away from the crowds. She almost felt as if she were being observed too, which always made her feel on edge. Edward smiled at her reassuringly. Shall we go then? Yes. Good luck, Rudolph. Derek will be waiting for you at the delivery destination. Amy gave his forehead one more pat for support. Even if he couldn't manage being a messenger anymore, Rudolph would always be a special bird. But even if he could hunt his own food, you couldn't just return a hand-raised bird to nature. And although, as a bird of the royal palace, he had definitely been allowed to fly long distances, he had been officially allowed to fly long distances, safety precautions were only taken for active messenger birds. Retirees continued to live at the royal palace and weren't neglected. However, they had fewer opportunities to fly long distances, and if they went out on their own and didn't return, a search might not even be conducted for them. Messenger birds have a set time frame for retirement to reduce the burden on any one bird. Rudolph still had a little way to go until his retirement. Until that day came, Amy hoped he could stay here and continue to fly as much as he wanted with peace of mind. Edward entered in with Marvin into the stage they had set up for the test. 2 guards followed at a slight distance, flanking them. One of the guards was Darius. Seeing the worried look on Amy's face, he gave her a nod. She felt a little more at ease after that. Marvin looked over the observers and began the opening statement. We will now be conducting the messenger bird Rudolph's flight test. The pass criteria are as follows. The bird being tested shall arrive at the destination, receive a stamp on the letter, and return to this spot within the time limit. The time limit is 30 minutes. The destination is the Northland Manor in the nearby castle town. The time starts now. At the signal, Edward lifted his arm. Rudolph lunged off it and spread his wings. The bird soared high into the air and then stopped for a split second, as if to show the observers the small cylinder tied to his leg that held the letter. Then, in the blink of an eye, he became a black speck against the sky. Cheers of praise rang throughout the grounds at his swiftness and the absence of any lingering ill effects of said injury. The destination, the Northland Manor, was Amy's home in the royal capital. Edward had suggested it. Because motives. It's the perfect distance away for the flying test, he had assured her. Plus, if he memorizes the way to your house, Rudolph can take you my letters, right? And that's how the test destination was decided. Amy had asked him why he wanted to send her letters all of a sudden. He explained that he'd be attending school and living in the school dormitories next year. Don't you write letters to friends you don't get to see often, he asked, so innocently. And just like that, she had no reason to refuse. But I had really only planned on being his friend until he started going to school. Friends with an expiration date. The Atomi game was still in her mind, of course. and it naturally made her uneasy about continuing to associate with the prince. But it wasn't all bad, because she had said yes. She was able to see how birds trained to memorize flight paths, and when Rudolph flew to the Northland House days before on a practice run, he had been able to play with Ticker, who had been in the garden at just the right time. Although the cat had initially been surprised at the snowy owl's sudden appearance, he didn't look scared. Perhaps he had seen him before at the royal palace. It even seemed like they were becoming two birds, two animals of a feather. Amy and Isabella's eyes were glued to the interaction, watching how they slowly and imperceptibly got closer and closer to one another, until eventually they started poking at each other curiously. Amy was really pleased at that. As long as it's just letters, I'm sure it'll be fine. Probably. Those are the famous last words. The butler, Claude, an administrative official from the royal palace, and Derek were all waiting for Rudolph at the Northland's house. Amy, proud and impressed with how the bird flew with such confidence, watched him in the sky until he disappeared from view. It'll be fine. Rudolph will pass, no question about it. Amy, Edward, and Marvin exchanged confidence smiles. Rudolph passed his flight test with flying colors and was reinstated as a messenger bird. From that day, the clever, talented owl began carrying letters between the third prince and Amy, not only when she stayed at the Northland Manor, but even when she visited her grandfather's home in the distant border province by the sea, because Prince Edward is not going to miss a single chance to send you a letter. And then we have an intermission here that I will read next time. But we've finished it. That is chapter 6 of Test Flight from I'd Rather Have a Cat Than a Harem. Woo! Next time, we will be reading more. This is an image of all the characters. This is the mom, the dad. This one, I believe, is Edward. I think that's his cousin Alexander. That might be the big brother? Might. I don't know. Wish they had names. But we are slowly making our way through this novel, maybe. I don't know. There is 12 chapters in a side story and some intermissions, so. Woo! I can tell you it's 230 pages, and where I started was 109. So thank you all for joining me. Thank you all for getting me to 50 subscribers before the end of 2024. It is now 2025. I hope you all had a lovely New Year's. I celebrated my 10-year anniversary with my husband, so that was really nice. It was lovely. I hope you all have a good time. Of course, if you want to support me, you can see these videos early on my Patreon. You can see my art and stuff also early there. I've also been working on anime review videos and scripts, so you can see those there, and some of the short stories I'm planning on publishing this year. If you want to commission me, you can find me on Ko-fi, and I have commissions there. I've got quick drawing. I don't know if the voice acting commission is up yet. I need to double check and actually put that up. And then you can also get my art on stickers, masks, and stuff on Redbubble. That's what that little slideshow is. I've got some based off the pride flags. I got mermaids based off of fruit pride flags. I've got random animals with knives because those are cute, and uteruses with knives because I have really horrible cramps, and I wanted a uterus holding different knives. And some people asked for some based off of Sonic Chow, so enjoy that. So you all have a lovely day. Stay safe. Stay hydrated. All that good stuff. Bye-bye. And then before I forget, special thanks to the Patreon and Ko-fi supporters. Let me go ahead and read your names. Kaleidoscope Chick, Micah, Cassie G, Jadis DS, Axel Alcaraz, Sime Random Sevens, Axe1154, and Tweed Tea Cakes. You're all awesome. Thank you for supporting me via Patreon and Ko-fi. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.